Prince Harry and wife Meghan Markle, they've just learned the hardest of lessons, which is, if you start a brawl, do not be surprised if you end up getting punched twice as hard. In fact, South Park has just knocked them out.
We want privacy! We want privacy! Thanks for having us on the show. It's so awesome to be here. It's great. So let me start with you, Sam. You've lived a life with the royal family, you've had everything handed to you, but you say your life has been hard, and now you've written all about it in your new book, Wah.
The animated couple on screen carried signs demanding privacy, while cameras followed their every move. 3 words changed everything that night. We want privacy. But South Park had just exposed the contradiction that would destroy everything Harry and Meghan had built.
And have done everything against actually getting their privacy, signing multi-million-dollar deals with the likes of Netflix and...
February 2023. The episode titled The Worldwide Privacy Tour wasn't supposed to be more than another weekly roast. Comedy Central's most ruthless satirists had taken aim at celebrities for decades. But something about this particular takedown hit differently. Within hours, those 3 words became the internet's favorite punchline. The damage was catastrophic.
And, you know, it's the embodiment of being famous for nothing. They're kind of like the Kardashians of the royal family, and it's entertaining to watch.
Picture the scene inside their Montecito mansion as the episode aired. Meghan, who'd spent years controlling every narrative, every interview, every public appearance, watching helplessly as animated versions of herself and Harry begged for privacy while desperately seeking attention. The dollar signs in her cartoon eyes weren't just mockery. They were truth wrapped in satire. And truth, it turns out, cuts deeper than any tabloid ever could.
Friend, you see, my wife and I are totally like, you should write a book because your family like stupid and then so are like journalists. So you hate journalists.
The initial shock gave way to something worse. Silence. Not the strategic silence of measured response, but the stunned quiet of people who'd just watched their entire brand get torched in 22 minutes of animation. Sources inside their camp described an atmosphere of disbelief turning to fury. How had 2 people who'd faced down the British monarchy been reduced to cartoons?
But I think, you know, this is a very easy win to sort of make fun of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And they're right, you know, they're famous for doing God knows what.
But the real wound came from public reaction. This wasn't outrage on their behalf. This wasn't sympathy for unfair treatment. People were laughing, not polite chuckles or uncomfortable giggles. Deep, cathartic laughter from audiences who'd finally seen someone say what they'd been thinking. The Emperor's new clothes moment had arrived, animated and merciless.
For no one knows what.
Put it with the rest of them.
Babe, time to do our daily 200 and...
Harry's animated portrayal stung with particular venom. Reduced to a bumbling sidekick clutching a book titled Spare, drinking from an oversized baby bottle, completely dependent on his wife for every thought. Years of military service, charitable work, and public advocacy erased in favor of a single devastating image, a lost prince who'd traded his crown for a leash.
Who's first even, and then Meghan Markle is just, you know, a B-list actress known for one role. She's not exactly a biochemist or a doctor.
The Spotify logo scattered around Meghan's crumbling throne told another story. Just months earlier, their podcast deal had collapsed amid whispers of unmet expectations and creative differences. Now South Park was turning their professional failures into visual metaphors. Every shattered brand deal became part of the animated wreckage. The empty microphone labeled Pearl represented dreams that never materialized.
Clearly have there. They clearly see, they have a very firm view of what they think of Meghan and Harry. They're the creators of the program. And it is a view shared by many. And clearly, they've got a court case going on at the moment with Samantha Mark.
Within 48 hours, the internet had transformed their carefully curated image into countless memes. TikTokers layered Meghan's actual podcast quotes over her cartoon throne. "My voice is power," she proclaimed in archived audio, while her animated self sat among ruins labeled, "Now streaming nothing." 3 million views in 12 hours. No PR firm could combat that reach. Legal teams activated immediately. Cease and desist letters flew to Comedy Central, to South Park Studios, to social media accounts suspected of first sharing clips. But threatening South Park with legal action is like threatening fire with gasoline. Trey Parker and Matt Stone had built an empire on lawsuit threats. Every legal document became potential script material. One Hollywood insider captured the futility perfectly. If you threaten South Park, congratulations. You just wrote your own next scene. The more Meghan's team pushed behind closed doors, the more ammunition they handed to writers who specialized in turning outrage into art. Their attempts at control only tightened the noose. Then came the leaked frames. Someone, somewhere, had access to unreleased South Park content. New images surfaced on Reddit showing even more brutal scenarios. Meghan hawking candles at a farmer's market, Harry in therapy, still clutching that baby bottle, each frame more devastating than the last. The lawyers scrambled to contain what had become an unstoppable digital wildfire. The free-throw disparity in public opinion was stark. While Meghan's supporters cried foul, claiming harassment and unfair treatment, the broader public response was merciless. Comment sections filled with variations of, "Finally, someone said it." Even moderate voices who'd previously defended the couple found themselves sharing clips. The exhaustion was palpable. But here's where strategy met reality. Meghan's team faced an impossible choice: respond and risk looking defensive, stay silent and let the narrative spiral. They chose silence, hoping the storm would pass. Instead, the quiet amplified everything. Without their side of the story, the public filled in blanks with increasingly brutal assumptions. Media veterans recognized the trap immediately. Meghan had built her post-royal brand on controlling the narrative, on being the one who speaks while others listen. Now she was trapped in someone else's story, animated and unchangeable. Every tool in her arsenal, emotional interviews, strategic leaks, sympathetic coverage, suddenly looked like parody fodder. The comedy world smelled blood. Late-night hosts who'd previously treaded carefully around the royals dove in headfirst. "You know your PR's in shambles when a cartoon hits harder than a royal scandal?" quipped one host to roaring audience laughter. Stand-up comics added Sussex material to their sets. Podcast hosts dissected every frame for content. Harry's solo attempt at damage control backfired spectacularly, reaching out to friendly media outlets with messages about feeling deeply hurt by the portrayal only generated more mockery. British satirists, typically respectful of his military service, joined the pile-on. One show branded him the Duke of Disorientation, lost in California, asking Alexa for directions out of his own memoir. Inside sources painted a picture of growing tension. Meghan reportedly cycled through PR firms and image consultants, all offering the same advice: let it blow over. But letting go wasn't in her playbook. Reports surfaced of emergency protocols and double-down strategies. The woman who'd taken on the British tabloids wasn't about to surrender to cartoons. The numbers told their own story. Google searches for Harry and Meghan South Park exceeded searches for their actual projects. Their carefully crafted documentaries and interviews were being viewed through the lens of parody. Every sincere moment now looked potentially ridiculous. The brand they'd spent years building had been recontextualized in 22 animated minutes. Hollywood's response was swift and brutal. The invitations stopped coming, not officially, but the names simply vanished from guest lists. "We don't want the drama," one event organizer explained. The couple who'd once commanded every room now carried an invisible warning label: PR disaster waiting to happen. Former allies distanced themselves with surgical precision. Harry's old friends from his pre-Meghan days made their positions clear through strategic silence or subtle jabs in interviews. The prince who'd once been everyone's favorite royal was now nobody's favorite anything. Even charity organizations worried about the overshadowing effect of Sussex presence. Chloe Bibby's perspective shifted when insiders revealed the real reason for the couple's radioactive status. It wasn't hate, it was exhaustion. The public had simply grown tired of the contradiction between demanding privacy while courting publicity. South Park had merely animated what everyone already felt. The Emperor's new clothes weren't just invisible, they were ridiculous. Netflix executives reportedly cringed. Spotify's decision to end their deal looked prescient. Brand partners reconsidered associations. The mockery had done what no scandal could. It had made them uncool. In Hollywood's currency of relevance, being laughed at was worse than being hated. At least hatred generated clicks. But perhaps the cruelest twist was this: the satire had inadvertently given them exactly what they'd claimed to want: privacy, real privacy, the kind that comes when people stop caring enough to watch. The cameras turned elsewhere. The headlines moved on. The world granted their wish in the worst possible way. Some strategists suggested South Park had actually done them a favor. The brutal mockery had at least made them relevant again, even if for the wrong reasons. Google searches spiked. Old interviews resurfaced. People who'd forgotten about them suddenly remembered. In the attention economy, being mocked beat being ignored. The real damage wasn't to their reputation, it was to their mythology. The carefully constructed narrative of two people standing against institutional power had been reframed as two people simply seeking institutional rewards. The victims had become the punchline. The heroes of their own story had become its villains. Inside Montecito, reports suggested a relationship under strain. Harry allegedly questioned whether the California dream was worth the cost. Meghan reportedly doubled down on plans for a comeback. Two people who'd united against the world now faced the possibility that the world had simply moved on without them. The privacy they demanded had arrived in the form of irrelevance. As weeks turned to months, the Sussex brand faced an existential question. How do you rebuild when the foundation has been exposed as satire? How do you demand to be taken seriously when the world has seen you as a cartoon? The answer, if it existed, wouldn't come from lawyers or publicists or strategic silence. In the end, South Park had achieved something neither palace pressure nor tabloid scrutiny could accomplish. They'd made Harry and Meghan ordinary, not special, not victimized, not heroic, just another celebrity couple whose contradictions had caught up with them. The crown hadn't destroyed them. The comedy had. The question now wasn't whether they could recover. It was whether anyone would notice if they did. In the cruel calculus of cultural relevance, being forgotten might be worse than being mocked. And as the laughter faded and the memes moved on, Harry and Meghan faced the hardest truth of all. The world had granted their request for privacy by simply looking away. Was this the price of getting exactly what they'd asked for?